Hello, this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Alright, we got some good stuff today. I'm actually doing a double today because, I couldn't get a podcast in yesterday, so I'll explain all that right now, actually. So basically yesterday as you guys know, I do track and I try to run almost every day. I was waiting for the weather to get better, and it didn't get slightly ideal until 8 o'clock, so I ran. It was about a 2-hour session, so by the time I got in, it was too late and I couldn't get a podcast done, but I did write down some things to talk about, so I will do that, as well as add on some of the things that I was going to talk about today. So, obviously, as many people predicted, the Celtics dominated Game 5. Maybe people didn't think they were going to dominate, but they did. I think most people knew the Celtics were going to win that series. To me, it became clear around midway through Game 3, halftime of Game 3, it was pretty clear the Celtics were the better team, at least from an experience standpoint. Maybe the Mavericks are a little more talented, but the Celtics, they were just a better team to win the finals. And, it was the regular season, you can even look back at that, even though the NBA regular season is slowly losing its value, you can see even there the Celtics were the best team in the league. They were going to win it all. But what I like about the Celtics is they weren't really dominated. They weren't carried. It was clear that Tatum and Brown were the best on the team, but they weren't carried by them. They didn't have to do everything. They had a great supporting cast. Similar to how Denver did it last year, obviously they have Jokic, who's amazing, but it wasn't just him. He didn't have to carry the entire team. Tatum and Brown, clearly the best players, but they didn't have to be amazing for them to win it all. Tatum really, his only amazing game was Game 5, where he dropped 30 and 11. He's a great talent. I have never denied that. I have some questions about his ability in the playoffs and finals. I'll dive deeper into this later, but yeah, he had a great Game 5, and he did lead them in a lot of the major stats, but I feel like in the late moments of the game, it was Jaylen Brown who was more dominant, and also, I think it's very important to note, Jaylen Brown was the one who guarded Luka. He was the main guy on defense that the Celtics were trusting. So that's where my questions come with Jason Tatum. I'll dive into that later. But yeah, the Celtics, they dominated this year start to finish. They went 80-21 overall. Postseason plus regular season, they went 80-21 overall. So a very dominant year for them. And, as far as Dallas goes, they're a talented team too. They got Luka, who I could argue is, I think he's for sure a top 3 in the league. I could make a case for him to be the best. I think right now the best in the league is Jokic. That's my opinion. But in no order, I'd say the top 3 are Jokic, Giannis, and Luka. I wouldn't put Tatum in there. Maybe I'd put him in the top 5. I'd consider it. But, yeah. Tatum, very talented. I wouldn't put him in the same category as Luka, Jokic, and Giannis. But, the point of this finals that I was trying to make on Monday was that sometimes it isn't about having the best player in the league on your team. It's about having that depth. Because you can't win finals by yourself. It's literally impossible. LeBron never won without Dwayne Wade or Bosh, or when he was with Cleveland, he didn't win without Kyrie or Kevin Love. As a matter of fact, when he made the finals in 2015, Kevin Love, I think he dislocated his shoulder or had some sort of shoulder injury that kept him out of the finals. Then Kyrie Irving got hurt game 1, what happened? LeBron lost to the Warriors. The next year, he had Kyrie and Kevin Love. They won. And obviously Curry, KD, they had each other in most of their finals. Curry always had Clay. Michael had Scottie Pippen. I can go on. Magic had Kareem. Kareem had Oscar Robertson, and then later on Magic Johnson. So all these great players, these are like top 5 all-time at least LeBron, Kareem, and MJ are top 5 players ever. Curry's probably top 10 to 12. So these are like all-time great players. They couldn't do it by themselves. Jordan never made it past the first round without Pippen. And LeBron never put up a fight in the finals without any. As great as he did in the 2018 playoffs, he got swept in the finals with no help. So it's really about having that depth. I think Drew Holiday is possibly the best number 3 option in the league. Because if you think about it, Drew Holiday, when he was with the Bucks, they won. He was the number 3 on the Bucks that year, and they won a ring in his first year. Now he goes to the Celtics. First year with the Celtics, they win it all. And I would argue, game 2, the Celtics might not win game 2 without Holiday's double-double. And that's the point I'm making. Like, Jaylen Brown and Tatum were great, but game 2, if they lose that, they won by 7 with Drew Holiday putting up 26 and 11. If he doesn't do that, the outcome of the entire series can be different. The Mavs win game 2, that shifts the momentum completely going back, and they go back to Dallas for the next 2 games. So that could have changed the entire outcome of the series. So these role players were they were difference makers in the whole series. Like, I'm not saying Drew Holiday or Derek White are better than Jaylen Brown or Tatum, but they are capable, on any given night, they can be just as important as those two. So, let's shift to Luka's side of this. Obviously, like I said, he's a top 3 player in the league. He's phenomenal. His stats right now, at this point in his career, are comparable to that of LeBron's stats at that age. And keep in mind, LeBron and Jordan neither won a ring until they were 27 years old. So, Luka, there's no need to worry right now. I do think he has to change the way he plays a bit. LeBron and Jordan, early in their careers, they were actually very similar in how they played. They were very athletic, both LeBron and Jordan. And Luka, not the most athletic, but he does have... He's a much better he's a better all-around player than Jordan and LeBron were at that age, because he can pass, rebound, in addition to being able to score 30 a night. Difference there is Jordan was a better defender than Luka was, obviously. Or than Luka is. What I'm worried about with Luka right now is the way he's playing. Very similar to LeBron and Jordan, where he's very ball dominant. That doesn't often translate to championships. When you don't have someone to fill the holes of your game, because no one is a perfect basketball player. In my opinion, the closest we've gotten to a perfect basketball player, someone who can do almost everything, is LeBron in his prime. In his prime, LeBron was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's kind of fallen off a bit defensively in the past few years. But yeah, in his prime, LeBron, he passed, he rebounded, he scored 20 to 30 a night. He was a solid defender, so he's the closest I think we've gotten to a perfect basketball player, but he missed some simple things like free throw shooting, So you need the whole point of having more than one great player is because that one great player is not perfect, and you need someone to fill the void there. Like, Kyrie is a good complement, but neither of Kyrie or Luka play defense well. That's a problem, because the Celtics actually dominated the Mavs' offense. when all you have is offense and you're playing a good defensive team, you're probably going to lose. The Mavs, I think, scored over 100 in one game. Yeah. 89 game 1, 98 game 2, 99 game 3, 122 game 4, and then 88 game 5. So they were locked up, especially by today's standards. I mean, maybe in 1980, 88 points can win you a game, but not now. Now you got to score a lot more than that. But I think Luka also has to learn to kind of rely on others more. I think that's what got LeBron and Jordan out of that. I don't want to say championship drought, but I kind of will. You know, they went 7-8 years without winning a ring, so the only way LeBron and Jordan were able to get over that hump was by, well, getting help and learning to rely on others when needed. You know, Jordan, he was a great defender. He was a great scorer, but he never was great at shooting. So the Bulls got people like Steve Kerr, John Paxson. They're not great players, obviously, but they do something Jordan can't. They don't have to score a lot because Jordan can drop 30 a night on just field goals, just getting 2 points every shot. But they fill in that hole of Jordan's game where he can't shoot threes. You know, that's the point I'm trying to make here. So the Mavs, Mavs and Luka have to change a little bit. Luka has to learn to rely on the people he has, because he does have Kyrie. We can't ignore that. But like, still, Kyrie doesn't fill that defensive void. When you look at the stars that have won a lot, Tim Duncan, he was great, but he was great at post scoring, but he needed Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili to work on the perimeter, you know? And, you know, Magic, he was a great passer. He elevated the people around him. People forget, until like 1986-87, Magic was not the primary scorer on the Lakers. It was Kareem. Kareem and Worthy were the big-time scorers on the team, not Magic. Magic was the best passer of all time, but he needed Kareem and James Worthy to do the scoring. And, you know, he won 5 rings. Magic and Tim Duncan won 5 rings. And, you know, Jordan, he didn't win rings until he had people that can shoot around him. You know, he barely got out of the first round, and I don't want to criticize him too much. He had to deal with the Celtics, which was kind of hell, and then he had to deal with the Pistons, who assaulted him. So, you know, I'm not criticizing him for that, but I'm trying to make a point. Like, he didn't win until he had people that could do things he can't. Like, when you think of another guy that was talented and ball dominant, Allen Iverson. What did he do? He didn't win a ring. Just a lot of impressive stats, which is great and all, but you don't win without people around you that can do what you can. Now, on the flip side, Tatum. He won, so it's a positive for him, but here's what worries me. Right? Tatum in the regular... So I'm not saying he was bad in the finals, but you see a big drop-off. In the regular season, 26.9 points a game. In the finals, 22. But the shooting is the biggest issue. He shot 47% from the field in the regular season to a 38% from the field in the finals. 37% from 3 in the regular season, 26% in the finals. So you see a drop in efficiency from Tatum, less productive, whereas Brown you see more consistent. He's more sustained throughout the entire season, and that's why I trust Jaylen Brown more in the late game, and that's why I think the Celtics often lean towards Jaylen Brown in the finals. And it was the same way when they played the Warriors and lost. Jaylen Brown seems like the better player in the clutch moments. And it's hard to see that, Jaylen Brown, he had a higher plus minus than Tatum, meaning he had a bigger impact. He guarded Luka. He deserved the MVP. I know it was a tight vote. It was like 7-4 or something in Jaylen Brown's favor, but he deserved the MVP over Tatum, the way he played. So I think Tatum's talented, but he's just not as reliable as Jaylen Brown in the finals, in the important stages of the season. So now we're going to shift to the NFL. So Jordan Love seems confident that an extension is going to happen for him before training camp. All I really want to see from Green Bay is just be smart. Jordan Love, he was great at the end of the season, but he spent the first 6 games as one of the least efficient starting quarterbacks in the league. So, he was great on the back half, which is positive and all, but I wouldn't pay him big money for that. He had a great playoff game, so there's positives, but I wouldn't give him big money because you can't buy into someone after one good season. There's been terrible quarterbacks that had great seasons. Blake Bortles threw 35 touchdowns once. He's now a bench warmer for whatever team he's on. And Carson Wentz, he had an MVP season, got paid big money, and got traded 2 years later. So just don't buy into Love too quickly. So now we're going to shift to the quarterback battle in Denver between Zach Wilson, Bo Nix, and Jarrett Stidham. I'm assuming Bo Nix is going to win that, just because he seems the most talented, the highest ceiling. I can't really see Jarrett Stidham beating either Zach Wilson or Bo Nix because Jarrett Stidham's been a backup for years. He's probably going to stay where he's been. And Zach Wilson's talented. He has a strong arm, but his problem is decision-making. He's almost the complete opposite of Bo Nix, he doesn't have a strong arm, but he's a lot smarter with the ball than Zach Wilson is. So, I think Bo Nix is highly likely to start, but I wouldn't be too surprised if Sean Payton were to go with Zach Wilson for the first few weeks. The one thing I think is a guarantee is that Bo Nix will start at some point in the season. Just because, I don't think Zach Wilson's at a point where he can be anything more than just a filler quarterback until Bo Nix is ready. He's not going to be the guy in Denver. All right, so now we're going to talk about I don't know if it's a holdout, but whatever's happening with Brandon Ayuk and the Niners. The Niners are a unique team in today's game. They don't really have, other than McCaffrey, they don't have a big, they don't have a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase in their receiving core. They have McCaffrey, who can kind of be both running back and receiver in a way, but another big thing is most of the good teams in the league have a great quarterback and a great receiver. I like Purdy. He does well with the Niners, but I don't think he's a great quarterback. And, I like Ayuk and Samuel, but they're not Chase or CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill by any means. But they make it work, and it's similar. I don't think they'll have the same success, but it kind of reminds me of what the Patriots did when they won 6 in 20 years. They never had a big standout guy. They had Randy Moss for a few years, but and then they had Gronk, but he was in and out of injuries. So they had guys along the way, but they would always, and in the later stages of that, they would have just one receiver that they made look very good. Like Chris Hogan that one year made the Pro Bowl. Had no idea who that guy was until that year, and then he disappeared off the face of the planet. So then even Wes Welker looked good with Tom Brady and the Patriots. So, like, what the Patriots did was they kept their two big components to winning a championship. They kept their coach, Belichick, who was fantastic, and Brady, their quarterback. They kept the two big guys. You know, so losing Ayuk could be, it'll take a hit, but I don't know if it'll kill the Niners because they still have Shanahan, who's an offensive genius. Purdy is a good quarterback in that system. And they still have McCaffrey, who is the best running back in the league. So even losing Ayuk wouldn't be a crazy big loss for them. You know, because they can just... I just feel like Shanahan will make it work. I have faith in his ability as a coach. You know, there's a reason that Belichick was still able to make it work after losing Randy Moss, after losing Gronk to injury. It always still worked. Because they still had Brady and Belichick. That's what was important, not their receiving core. Alright, so one of the bigger questions in the sports world is if the Celtics will be able to repeat as champion next year. I do think it's gotten less common over the years to repeat as champion with all the free agency, and player mobility is a lot more popular now. So with players constantly moving, it's harder to win multiple years in a row. I mean, the last three-peat we had was the Lakers, I believe, in the early 2000s. Last back-to-back champion we had was the Warriors in 2017 and 18. You know, but in the NBA, historically, it has been more popular. Like, three-peats and back-to-back champions have been more popular than, like, in the NFL, you know. Like, the NFL, there has never been a three-peat, which is hard. There's some teams it's hard to believe never won three in a row, like the Pats. You would think at some point there they won three in a row, or at least two. But the last time the Patriots, there was one time the Patriots won two in a row in that 20-year stretch. That was 03 and 04. So, or 04 and 05, sorry. So, I mean, it's getting less and less common as free agency gets more popular. But, I mean, if the Celtics keep the depth they have and keep Jaylen Brown and Tatum the way they are, well, actually, if Tatum gets a little bit better down the stretch in the playoffs, they'll actually be even better. You know, they have a chance. I don't know if they'll run back-to-back or three-peat, but I can see them winning 3 in, 7 years. I can see that happening for the Celtics. Just because they keep role players. The way they develop their team the last few years has been fantastic. You wouldn't think Derek White would be an important player, but he had the best plus-minus on Boston last year. He was very impactful for Boston, and I mentioned earlier, Drew Holiday in Game 2 was probably the reason they won. And putting the Mavs in a 2-0 hole was very important for the Celtics. So as great as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are, they wouldn't have won without role players like Porzingis, Holiday, Derek White. But, you know, Brad Stevens, he built the team very well, and I think what Brad Stevens realized is that Brown and Tatum are good, but in order for them to win a championship, they needed depth. They couldn't just keep relying on Brown and Tatum to do everything in the playoffs. And I think the reason, I said this on Monday, I think the reason people have trouble painting them as one of the all-time great teams, and it really depends what you consider an all-time great team. If we're talking like top 10 ever, that the Boston, they're not top 10 ever. You know, like the 86 Celtics were better, the 2000 Lakers were better, the Heat were better. You know, there's been better teams than this year's Celtics, but the reason people find it hard to believe that they were so dominant is because they don't have an all-time generational player. Tatum and Brown, they're Hall of Famers, but like they're going to make it into the Hall of Fame if they keep this up. But they're not going to be like top 20 ever. Whereas the Lakers, they had Shaq and Kobe. The Bulls had Jordan. The Heat had Dwayne Wade and LeBron. The Warriors had KD and Steph. You know, so they all had top 20, some even top 5 players ever. You know, so the fact that the Celtics don't, and that the Celtics are very reliant on their depth, it makes it hard for people to wrap their arms around the fact that the Celtics, they won over 60 games this year. They were 14 games ahead of the second seed in the East. And they went 16-3 in the playoffs. So they were about as dominant as any team has been. But it's just hard for people to wrap their arms around. All right. So I don't think I ever talked about the NFL draft on this podcast, just because I haven't been able to do one since like March, I want to say. But I initially didn't understand Michael Penix being drafted by the Falcons because they had Kirk Cousins. But what I'm realizing is it doesn't always matter if you sit behind an all-time great player. You can sit behind a quarterback that was just above average and still learn a lot. Like, Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith, who was good. He was never great. He was never a top 5 quarterback in the league. But, you know, he sat behind him. Clearly, Mahomes turned out pretty well, you know? But also, Jordan Love sat behind Rodgers. He looked really good last year in the home stretch. You know, so if you have Penix sit behind Cousins for a year or two, it could be very beneficial, especially if you, well, I don't think it's an if anymore. They clearly don't see Desmond Ridder as their guy. So I think the Michael Penix pick it has potential to be a lot better, a lot smarter than people see. I don't want to jump to conclusions just because I did it with Jordan Love and he turned out a lot better than I thought he would, so trying to be a little bit smarter. Alright, what else did I have? So there's been news about Rodgers missing minicamp. And I'm not going to believe any of the reports about him going off to do some drug or whatever the hell he's doing now. I'm not going to speak on that because I have no proof that it's true. What I will say is I do believe he should be there because his situation now is a lot different than he had in Green Bay. I didn't care when he missed minicamp in Green Bay because he was familiar with the offense, the coach. He was familiar with a lot of people there. Right now, he played 4 snaps last year. He has an entirely new O-line. I don't think he knows the coach very well at this point, Saleh, and especially, he hasn't been under a coach who was in question, really. I mean, the last year with McCarthy was a little questionable, but you know, Rodgers has always had coaches that were not in question. As we speak right now, Robert Saleh his job is in question. If he has another bad year, it might not look good for him. So I think if I were him with the new O-line, the coaching question, and the young receiving core that he really hasn't gotten a chance to know, I'd be attending this, but I don't know. We'll see if it works out. I think there's 4 positions. I think there's 4 positions that really matter in football. I think you need a good GM, a good quarterback, a good head coach, and I think was it only 3? Yeah, all right, never mind. 3. Oh no, great owner as well. Sorry. The way I see it, the Jets, they have their owner, I would say, is below average. Their GM's pretty good. I'll give them that. And Aaron Rodgers is good. And their coach, I would probably give him like a B-. From what I've seen. Robert Saleh, probably a B- coach. But the only way you're a contender is if you have an A in all those categories. Like when the Packers had Aaron Rodgers and they were making the playoffs every year, contending for a Super Bowl, they don't have an owner, but they had a good GM, a good head coach, and Aaron Rodgers. So they had those 3 positions down, which the Jets don't, so it's very questionable. And they're in a very stacked AFC, so it's hard for me to say that they're going to be competitive in the playoffs this year. All right. So Sean McVay is entering his 8th season as the Rams head coach. And honestly, that feels a little quick because I feel like only a few years ago was his first season. But also, it's hard to believe because he's only 38 right now. So he's still a relatively young coach, very much like LaFleur and Shanahan, which all 3 of those guys have done a great job in all their organizations. I think they've all had very successful careers at such a young age. And they all have different strengths, I would say. Shanahan, he's an offensive genius. I think LaFleur develops players very well. Jordan Love being the main example. And Sean McVay, he kind of has a good balance, I would say. He's great on offense. He's great on defense. He kind of does all 3 of the things I just mentioned in a very smart way. And when you look at his overall career with the Rams so far, he's 77-49, which is a 61% win percentage. And that's overall, including postseason and regular season. 77-49. So he's been very successful. He obviously made it to a Super Bowl. Lost because he played the Patriots, but still, he's had a very solid career. I think the Rams, as far as they go this year, I think they have a chance to be second in the division. They're not going to beat the Niners at all, but I think they may have the upper hand on the Seahawks and Cardinals heading into this year. So, yeah, they're probably... I feel like I say this about a lot of teams, but they're probably an 8 or 9 win team, the Rams. But, yeah, they're probably a first-round exit if I had to guess. That's just a shot in the dark. I have no idea for sure. But, yeah, McVay, great career at the Rams so far. So, T. Higgins signed a franchise tag the other day and is expected to attend training camp. I mean, that was probably... I could have told you that, to be honest with you. They have a solid roster. Obviously, Higgins, Burrow, Chase, Joe Mixon. They have a lot of offensive firepower, and Zach Taylor, he's a great offensive coach. Even their defense is pretty solid. And they're probably going to be a contender again this year. I don't know if they'll compete with the Chiefs. I would feel comfortable saying they're the second best team in the AFC, to be honest with you. Behind the Chiefs, obviously, going into this year. I'd say they have the upper hand on the Bills and the Ravens. But I mean, I'm rooting for them to beat the Chiefs, to be honest with you. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They obviously lost to the Rams, but they put up a pretty solid fight, especially considering their coach and their quarterback were in their first Super Bowl ever. So, I mean, I wouldn't bet against the Bengals this postseason, but that's unless they're playing the Chiefs. If they're playing the Bengals, Ravens, or anyone else, I'm betting that I'm guessing the Bengals will have the upper hand in that game. Chiefs is a tough one, but yeah, I feel like I went over this a few months ago, but I think the Chiefs can do a three-peat, but kind of rooting against that because I'd rather see another team have advantage. But anyway, let's shift to this. So Mike McDonald said that he wants DK Metcalf to be a moving target for defenses. The only reason I picked out this story was just to talk about how I think Seattle will do. In all honesty, they're a fourth-place team in that division. I would guess Niners, then Rams, then Cardinals, then Seahawks. They're not... I mean, they have Metcalf, but their quarterback is... you compare their quarterback situation to that of the Cardinals, Rams, and Niners, all three of those teams seem to have their quarterback figured out. Like, the Rams are going to have Stafford for a few more years. Cardinals seem to like Kyler Murray, and obviously the Niners have Brock Purdy. They seem to love him over there, so... but then the Seahawks, they have Sam Howell, who's just kind of, I don't know, he has talent, but it's like, it almost feels temporary. It doesn't feel like they're going to stick with him at all. Unless he does what Geno Smith did, and he proves everyone wrong. Obviously, if I'm recalling correctly, I remember saying Drew Lock would beat out Geno Smith for that job, and then Geno Smith came in, won comeback player of the year, so I was dead wrong on that. So I could be wrong on this. Sam Howell could be a lot better than I'm anticipating, but I'm pretty confident they're a fourth place team in the division. They're going to have a lot of things to consider after next year. All right, so Klay Thompson is intending to test free agency. I mean, I wouldn't, honestly, if I'm a competitive team in the league, I wouldn't mind taking him, as crazy as it sounds, as a bench player, to be honest with you. I know it seems Klay Thompson's way too good to be a bench player, but there's a lot of players that seem too good to be on the bench, but they are, like, Porzingis comes off the bench now. Russell Westbrook is off the bench now. So, I mean, Klay, he's 34 years old. I mean, he showed a lot of decline last year. So, I mean, I don't think taking him as a bench player is a horrible thing. I think I feel like he would be one of the best bench players in the league, probably the best. Because he still has talent, but he's just not the same as he was. He just isn't a top 5 shooter anymore like he was. So, I mean, I feel like he can come off the bench and be highly effective. As far as what team he goes to, I have no idea. I know he grew up, I feel like he grew up in LA, but don't quote me on that. But I feel like he grew up in LA. I think his dad played for the Lakers as well. So, I mean, I'm not sure if the Lakers could use shooting, but I feel like every time they try to sign a free agent, it goes south. They sign him to the team, and then he's very disappointing. They blame everything on him. He gets dropped the first year. Seems like a cycle for the Lakers right now, but if I'm being forced to guess right now, I would say Klay signs with the Lakers, just based. But I absolutely, that's just a complete guess. I have no further information other than the fact that he's going to be a free agent this year. All right. So I had a thought earlier today. I mean, the Celtics, so obviously the Celtics, that was their 18th title, puts them ahead of the Lakers now, who have 17 titles. And it's kind of crazy to think that the Celtics have more, actually. It was crazy enough to think that they had the same amount of titles, but more now is even crazier, because when you think about the great players that both those teams have had, I think I can name a lot more great Lakers players than great Celtics. Because the Celtics, they've had Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Paul Pierce, They've had great players, obviously. That's why they have 18 titles. But the Lakers, Shaq, Wilt, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, James Worthy, Kareem, Kobe, Magic. They had LeBron kind of out of his prime, but they did have him. He did win a title there. So I can name a lot more star players from the Lakers than I can from the Celtics. But the Celtics have not only 4 titles, but they have dominated the Lakers head-to-head in finals matchups. They won the first 8 they won 6 in the 60s, I'm pretty sure. I think 1 in 59, I believe. Hang on, I gotta fact check myself here. Yeah, so 6 in the 60s, 1 in 59, and then they won a very tight 7-game series in 84. And some of these finals were close. 62, 7 games, 66, 69, 84, all 7-game series. And the 84 finals is honestly one of the most competitive finals there ever was. But yeah, they've had. It feels like they're a lot more competitive than the numbers show. The Lakers won in 85, 87 in 6 games. 2008, Celtics won in 6, and most recently, 2010, the Lakers won in 7. So they've been competitive in their finals, but the Celtics it's still 9-3. the Celtics have still won half their titles against the Lakers. So the Lakers have more star power, but I think Boston develops... They're a smarter and better developed organization, historically. I do think it's very important to note that half their rings come against the Lakers. The Lakers won 3 of their 17 against Boston. But they're obviously the 2 most successful organizations in NBA history. But it really does not feel as lopsided as it is, considering how close all those finals were. Alright, so David Bakhtiari believes that Rodgers and the Jets will for sure make the playoffs this year. And I mean, they have the talent to. They have pretty solid receiving core. They have Breece Hall, a very talented running back. They have Aaron Rodgers, who, even though he's shown a bit of decline, is still a very solid quarterback. He's just not the same Aaron Rodgers he was in 2018, 2015, or 2012, his MVP years. But he's Aaron Rodgers all the same. He's still an A quarterback. I would still put him in I'd still place him near the top of the list as far as quarterbacks go. My only problem, and also just have a great defense, which is also pretty damn important. My only problem is everyone else in the AFC. The fact that they're going against the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens. The Dolphins do have more offensive firepower. Even the Texans now are a very talented team. They made the playoffs last year. And the Jets' schedule, it's not horrible, but it gets a little brutal towards the end. First of all, they open up with the Niners, which is probably going to be a loss. Probably going to be a loss. Then they get the Titans, Pats, Broncos, Vikings. Those are all probably wins. Bills, they usually split with Buffalo, so that can go either way. Steelers, I can see them winning. Pats, I can see them winning. Texans, I would give the Texans the upper hand here. Cardinals, I think I would give to the Jets. Colts, probably goes to the Jets. Same with the Seahawks. So, up until week 14, I can only see them losing 4 or 5 games heading into week 14. So that puts them at, I believe, puts them at about 8-5 heading in, or 9-4 heading into the week 14. But then they get the Dolphins, who I think they will split with. The Jags is probably a win. I think the Rams are going to be good this year. The Bills and then the Dolphins again. So, I think they have a schedule. They'll be competing for a playoff spot start to finish. It's just everyone else in the AFC is so good, it's hard for me to place the Jets. It's hard for me to place any AFC team anywhere except for the Chiefs, Bengals, and Ravens. I would put them in the top 3. Anything after that, it's hard to say. But, they're a very talented team. I hope they make the playoffs. It would be a nice change. But, yeah. My only worry, it's not their roster. It's the firepower in the AFC. And if the Jets, if their O-line shows big improvement, which I hope it does, because you don't really need, when you think about it, the Patriots O-line didn't have a lot of, when they were with Brady, when they were winning title after title. They never had any big names, but they had they had a group of O-linemen that worked well together and worked well with Brady. That's why I think Rodgers should be at minicamp right now, because that way, I feel like missing these early practices is leading to, like, it's going to do more harm than good, the way I see it. But like I said, I mean, I wouldn't be saying this if he were on the Packers, a team that he spent like 15 years with. It's a different position. I think he's not used to it. And I do think he has to, that's another problem I have with the Jets. Rodgers has to get used to playing with an organization that hasn't had great history in the past. No, but if the Jets were going to turn around at any point, I think this year is the year for them to do it. Yeah, like I said, they have a lot of promising players. Garrett Wilson, he's got a lot of promise. I don't know if he's going to be any better than the players Rodgers has played with. I don't think he's any Devontae Adams. But it could be a good thing. I think sometimes with number one receivers, there's pressure on a quarterback to force it to them. I notice that sometimes with Rodgers, but he's a experienced quarterback, so he doesn't do it a lot, like as much as the young quarterbacks. Like watching the Dolphins last year, sometimes it felt like Tua was forcing it to Tyreek Hill because he's the star player there. But I mean, not having a definitive number one receiver isn't always the worst thing, because there's not one guy dominating the whole thing, and also that way the defense, if you don't have a definitive number one receiver, the defense isn't going to shift their focus. They're not going to double team, the guy you always rely on. If you have multiple people to rely on, defense is going to have a tough time guarding you. That's why I like the Niners, because they have Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Can't double team both of them. Not to mention they have McCaffrey, who is probably the greatest weapon in football right now on the offensive side. So sometimes not having a number one receiver dominating the ball could be a good thing. But yeah. Let's quickly shift to the last topic of the day. Dan Quinn, he said that Jayden Daniels, he described him as very veteran-like. And, with Jayden Daniels, I think you'll see his talent very early. He's been compared to Lamar Jackson, which I agree with. You're going to see very early that he's very athletic. He might be a little inaccurate, much like Lamar in the first year of his career. But you'll see his athleticism, you'll see his talent within the first 4 games, I think. He has a very high ceiling. The number one worry I think most people have is that he's obviously not very big. I think people are seeing him very similar to the way they saw Bryce Young, where he's kind of on the smaller side. But Jayden Daniels is, I think... Bryce Young was also, he wasn't just skinny, he was on the shorter side of quarterbacks as well. Whereas Jayden Daniels is 6'3", I think, 6'2", maybe. So he's a bit taller than Bryce Young, and I think he has a higher ceiling. He has more potential than Bryce Young had. So I think he'll be great in his career, but Washington also has to change how they've been running their organization because they have not had very good luck with quarterbacks for a while. I think the last time they had a quarterback that was above average is Kirk Cousins. So we'll see if he's able to turn that around. This was Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan, Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. I believe the next time I'll be doing a podcast is probably Friday, and then I'll be gone for a week, then I'm right back. But yeah, this summer I should be a lot more consistent with my uploading schedule than I am during the school year. So have a nice day. I will see you on Friday.